There are several underlying technologies that enable current practices of surveillance. One such major technology is that of the database. This technology allows for arranging, classifying, storing, and easily retrieving information about its objects. Harnessed for the purpose of tracking people, it is a tool that is used in order to make surveillance a systematic operation as opposed to a sporadic one. It is a tool that enables the storage of huge amounts of information and making sense of this big data. Two examples of database-driven surveillance applications are credit cards and loyalty cards. These are long-established applications still being used extensively today, which historically served as a precedent for manifesting the logic and the power of database-driven surveillance. Yet before we delve into these two examples, we should first understand what a database is and what the challenges of creating an efficient database are. A database is a structured collection of data held electronically. Databases can be as simple as an Excel table on your personal computer and as vast as the complex and gigantic datasets kept by large internet corporations. Databases are designed for ease and quickness of insertion, modification, deletion, and especially retrieval. Indeed, the efficient insertion of data and its efficient retrieval are the ultimate challenges of database owners. Inefficient insertion of data will impede the goal of creating a meaningful dataset, and inefficient retrieval can cause an existing dataset to be underutilized or even unusable. In order to make the best of what databases can offer, the data that is inserted should conform to certain rules. If, for example, a month field consists of a double digit, a user shouldn't be allowed to enter just one digit or to enter the name of the month in letters. This is called standardization of data, and when this is upheld, it allows for data to be easily linked. For instance, it allows linking all the records from a certain month together. Yet feeding a database, especially if done correctly, is a costly task. It requires the investment of expensive work hours by personnel who will insert, update, and delete records. Unless, of course, the owner of the database finds a way to automate the process or to outsource it somehow. With regards to the challenge of efficient retrieval, the two central problems are ease of use and excess of data. Imagine, for instance, a database containing the records of all the students in a large city. Also imagine that the only unique identifier of these students in the database is their full name. If you search for the record of a student with an exotic name, you will be sure to find her quickly. But searching for a popular name will retrieve dozens of results, which make the identification difficult or even impossible. Well-formed databases with well-chosen unique identifiers overcome these problems. Last, with regards to databases, storing the data is itself one of the least expensive aspects of running a database, and there is thus little to no incentive for the owner of the database to delete all data. With that in mind, it is time to go back to our two case studies. Credit cards were not invented for the purpose of surveillance, but their history is intertwined with it. The challenge of enabling cashless money transactions and extending credit to the cardholders, and the further challenge of doing both of these things while avoiding fraud, has provoked the credit card industry to find very creative and efficient solutions. Technology, and specifically database technology, was adopted gradually for these very purposes, and along the way, as a byproduct, created a very potent surveillance tool. The unique number of each credit card and its association with a certain individual were of course required in order to make the cashless transaction possible. After all, how would the credit company know who should be billed? Yet once operating within a database, this highly unique number makes it possible to link the cardholder with additional data, such as yearly amounts of transactions, transaction locations, the identity of the business venue that the holder frequented, and more. These links, which are not essential to the credit card service, are nonetheless enabled because of the credit card database. Contributing to the high efficiency of credit card databases is the fact that for several decades now, the whole process is automated. Once we swipe the card, the transaction is recorded electronically, and our card number, the vendor's unique number, and the amount are all inserted into the database. This process is fully automated, which translates to almost no database errors. The little non-automated work that is done in order to feed the database is done by us, the cardholders, and by vendors. We as cardholders carry these cards in our wallets and swipe them willingly, and vendors do their part willingly in order to enable the desired transactions. Yet on top of making transactions, we are actually feeding a database with information about ourselves. Loyalty cards, on their part, operate very similarly to credit cards. They too were not created historically as a surveillance tool, but rather as a tool to encourage the increase and more frequent use of a certain vendor, yet gradually they became surveillance tools. Once they became database linked, loyalty cards gained the same advantage as credit cards with regards to feeding their databases. Namely, that it is done semi-automatically with the non-automatic parts outsourced to the shoppers who carry the card with them and swipe it every time they make a purchase at that business. Loyalty cards allow the business that issues them to track the purchase pattern of a given individual or household and to tailor its marketing accordingly. For instance, if you buy baby food, the business can offer you diapers that are on sale. This is a feature that some people find rather useful, but its success does encourage businesses to increase their surveillance efforts. The vendor can also sell this data to local and global corporations, and thus make money out of it in that way. Yet once our data is sold to a third party, we have no idea what is done with it, and this includes uses that we might disapprove of. Government agencies, on their part, have access to some of the data that is gathered commercially and make use of it for their purposes. One of the better known uses is made by police investigative forces who track and locate the credit card activity of a person of interest. Another known government use is done for the purpose of preventing tax fraud and money laundering. One of the advantages loyalty cards have over credit cards is that they allow cash transactions to be recorded, which creates quite unique data, as cash transactions are currently the ones most elusive to those who wish to track economic transactions. How do these practices of credit card and loyalty card databases tie in with critiques of surveillance scholars? First, both practices were labeled by scholars as practices of surveillance. Credit cards in particular received attention in early writing of modern electronic surveillance that is connected across networks, also known as dataveillance. It is Roger Clark who back in 1988 coined the term dataveillance in an attempt to alert people of this new type of surveillance which follows individuals via such networks and especially via the connection between several databases. These links allow for new uses of the data which are sometimes detrimental to individuals and in any case unconnected to the original purpose of the data. For instance, in our case, a client's credit transaction history, which initially was recorded in order to enable the transaction, is then stored in order to create a credit score, which is sometimes used in order to deny or limit credit and to determine eligibility for further unrelated services. Second, as our society becomes more digitized and as linking techniques improve, so grows the digital footprint of each individual. This occurs to the extent that Haggerty and Erickson talk of an electronic data double that exists alongside each of us. Contributing to this is the low incentive that organizations have to delete all data, and the end result is a quasi-permanent record that follows us wherever we go. Like the fear of a school's notorious permanent record, here too, one of the fears is that a mistake you made will continue to haunt you and that you'll pay a disproportionate price for it. Third, surveillance scholars have raised concerns with regards to the low level of incentive needed in order to gain people's cooperation with their own surveillance. In our case, some loyalty cards offer very little financial reward in exchange for us swiping the card. Still, many use such cards even today when the surveillance practices of loyalty cards are increasingly known. While surveillance scholars do tend to approve of some specific uses of database-driven surveillance and even consider some of them empowering, there are many other uses they disapprove of and see as harmful. Unleashing the power of databases for surveillance purposes opens up endless possibilities for social improvements as well as for social control and repression.